Hear the Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to Matthew.
Glory to Christ, you, O Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "The kingdom of heaven is as if a man going on a journey summoned his slaves and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. The one who had received the 5 talents went off at once and traded with them, and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. Then the one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, 'Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, I've made 5 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' And the one with the 2 talents also came forward, saying, 'Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I've made 2 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' Then the one who had received the 1 talent also came forward, saying, 'Master, I knew that you are a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow, gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours.' But his master replied, 'You wicked and lazy slave. You knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow, that I gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and so on my return I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one with 10 talents. For to all who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.' This is the gospel of the Lord."
Praise to Christ.
When I was young and hot-headed and foolish and callow and ignorant, all that kind of thing, I helped my dad. He bought this derelict barn on Gower, and I helped him to renovate it. So for a couple of years, I worked on it. And I think the relationship here is that it was never mine, but I did my best to do right by my dad and to look after his interests in that regard. So I gave it my best shot, I put in my best efforts and worked hard on it. And it's still standing, I'm happy to say. It still works, as it were. And likewise, funny enough, when I went to Zimbabwe, I lived with Nicky's folks for a while. He was getting a bit old, not as vigorous as he was, he had this business, and so I kind of looked after some of his affairs. And in the same way, I tried to do right by them. Again, I didn't actually own any of this stuff, but he kind of entrusted parts of it to me. So he didn't have to do it, basically. And I did my best to, if you like, honour that trust and look after his interests. And I think I understand this parable of the talents in a similar kind of way. I think it's about trust. This man who goes on this journey summoned his slaves and entrusts his property to them. He hands it over to them to look after. And obviously the first 2 understood this and did their best to discharge their trust. They traded with it, which is what they understood they were expected to do, and they did it, and they did well, they did okay. And so they got their return, and the master was very happy about that. He also gave a talent to this other guy. Now, I think the thing is that he knows what each one is capable of. One of them is obviously a pretty shrewd kind of guy, and he gives him 5 talents. The other one's not the sharpest knife in the block, so he gives him 2. But he gives exactly the same commendation to them both. As far as he's concerned, they've both done right. They've both discharged their trust. If you like, he was reasonable in his expectations of them. He knew what they could do, and that's what he wanted them to do. He didn't expect them to do any more than they could. And so he gave over to them, give it your best effort. And the problem he had with the third one was that the third one could have done something and basically chose not to. That seems to be the nub of it. The third one did not discharge his trust. He did not accept what was entrusted to him in the right spirit. And in his response, he says, I know you're a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow, gathering where you did not scatter. Well, that's obviously not true. Because the boss, this master, obviously does reap where he's scattered. He doesn't actually expect anything more of them than they can do. He knows what they're capable of, and he gives them resources. Therefore, he's definitely not reaping where he hasn't sown. So this is actually wrong. This is actually slanderous. Why has the third servant got this attitude? Why does he think that he's a harsh man? Because he's obviously not. Because the thing he says to the other two when they've done their stuff is he says, come and share my joy. Those aren't the words of a harsh man. So this third one has got the wrong end of who the master is. Now, I'm not sure if he seriously believed that, or if he's just trying to justify his inaction. Maybe he's simply lazy. Anyway, it doesn't really matter why he didn't do it. The fact was he did not discharge this trust. And that's, I think, what the master felt grieved about. And so, I think this relates to us. And then I think, in the same way that the three servants all got something entrusted to them, I think actually all of us have had something entrusted to us. You might think of it in terms of a relationship, with a kind of friendship. When you actually become friends with someone, you actually entrust part of yourself to them. You know, if you really like someone and you actually you feel like emotionally or spiritually somehow entrust yourself to them in that friendship, you do it in the hope that they will reciprocate, that they'll entrust themselves to you. It's actually very disappointing if you love someone and you want to be friends with them and then they don't reciprocate. You feel it, don't you? You feel let down. And, you know, they have their reasons, so you mustn't kind of be too bitter about it, but at the same time you feel a bit flat. You know, it's a bit disappointing. But if you do that, and then they seem to be reciprocating this thing, and then they betray you, that's horrible. Now, we're not here talking about any concrete property. We're just talking about basically getting along with someone. You know, if you confide in them, you somehow entrust some knowledge or some personal matter to them, and then they gossip about it, you feel betrayed. Or if you confide in them something which troubles you, and then they just laugh at you, or you scorn you, or despise you, or something, or get angry with you, then you feel hurt, you feel deeply let down. But again, this isn't about concrete property, this is simply about that sense of entrusting someone with yourself. Obviously, how much more if you've got something concrete to deal with? Did you look after it or not? You know, you lend someone a car for a journey and then they smash it up, you feel pretty let down. You know, that's not on, you don't do that. You know, you look after something on behalf of someone else. And so I think this parable should be understood in terms of this relationship of trust. The master has trusted these people, and they have not all returned that trust. And I wonder if you think about it in terms of our relationship with God, that somehow he has entrusted himself to us. That if we've believed in him, if we have trusted him, if we have received something from him, he has entrusted something to us. Which begs the question, what is it? Well, that's why I used the analogy of friendship. It doesn't have to be something tangible. But that bond is there. It's a meaningful exchange. You know, it's real. And it's either the cause of joy when it's reciprocated in a happy way, or it's a cause of grief and sorrow if it's not. But it's a real thing. It's not imaginary. And so I think this is how Jesus wants us to understand this is that we have this reciprocal relationship with our Master in heaven. And one way I think about this is that why do I remain faithful to what I believe to be true? There's quite a lot of pressure in the world now for me to not remain faithful to it. I could probably give myself an easier life, perhaps get preferment in the church if I simply abandoned what I thought was true. But I don't. Not just because I'm awkward or intransigent or just sort of otherwise, but because if I ask myself, why am I doing this? Why do I do what I do? The reason, when it really comes to it, if someone says, why do you really do it? What actually motivates you? Why do you stick at it? The reason is this: I want to hear those words. Well done, good and faithful servant. Come and share your master's happiness. I really want to hear that. I really want my Father to say, well done, son, you did good. Come in. I want Jesus to say, well done. Come and share my joy. Because obviously the analogy is that the Master is God. He is joyful and wants us to share his joy. He is not harsh. He is not unreasonable. He will not expect of us what is unreasonable. But I think all of us have something entrusted to us. All of us do. And therefore all of us can discharge that trust in some way. And obviously that's going to be very different for each one of us. Therefore it's very, very open-ended how we interpret this, because for each one of us it's going to mean something different, because all of us have got different things in our lives and different ways in which we'll actually enact this. And I think Jesus leaves it deliberately vague so that we can take to heart this idea that basically this is about being trustworthy. Will we discharge this? Because the reason that he wants us to be faithful is in order that we might share his happiness. That's the point. Because he is generous. He's not mean. And it's slanderous to think otherwise. You know, in the reading from Zephaniah, it's pretty hard reading. The people at the beginning said, the Lord's not going to do anything, basically. Well, that's not true. He is. Are they being naive? Are they being stupid? Are they just being slanderous to him there? But he is going to do something. What's missing from that reading from Zephaniah is why the Lord is so grieved at these people. It says they're the remnant of Baal. Baal, this other god that the Israelites got. He's not talking to the whole world here. He's talking to his own people. He's talking to the Israelites. He said, listen to me. I will be your God. I will look after you. I will care for you. Just do what I want you to do. Amongst which it says, don't sacrifice your children. Don't kill your babies. And one of the deep grudges that God had against the religion of the Canaanites before the Israelites was that they sacrificed their children. He hated it. And when it comes up in the book of Kings, it says that Solomon had all these wives and these women turned his heart away from the Lord. And he said he sacrificed children. And the Bible puts it in very strong language. That, if you like, is the depths of the depravity of the people turning away from the Lord, is the disgusting acts they did. And the Lord is grieved at that. That's why he wants to do all these things. He's saying, look, if you say I am simply uninterested in your affairs and you persist in doing these disgusting things, I will act. Listen up, boys and girls, it's going to happen. But in the psalm, you get this cry from the heart. Where is it? Lord, you have been our refuge from one generation to another, harking back to the past. And then it talks about how hard life can be. You know, that we struggle through life, we get old, and it becomes wearisome and toilsome, and you get tired and you get worn out. And he says, teach us to number our days. You know, what are we supposed to do? You know, keep our hearts up. How do we carry on? Turn thee again, O Lord, and tarry not. Be gracious unto thy servants. Because if we do remain faithful, we will find it tiring. We'll say, Lord, when are you going to come? When are you going to bring us? When are you going to deliver us from this? This hard service, this toilsome labour, this weariness, that we're constantly at odds with the world around us. You know, we're surrounded by people that do not cherish this trust, that do not love your truth, that do not do right. Lord, what are we going to do? Because we're tired out by it. And the psalmist cries out from his heart, but Paul says, concerning the times and seasons, you don't need to know, because you know that day will come suddenly, like a thief in the night, but you won't know when it's coming. So he says, be awake, be watchful. Like the bridesmaids, be watchful, be ready for when he comes, when the bridegroom comes. Because they're talking about the same event. Don't fall asleep. We're children of the day. Therefore, let us live as children of the day, with the things that bask in the light, the things that want to be seen. Because the people that do things that do not want to be seen are children of the night. So let's not try and hide in the dark. Let's live in the day. For God has destined us not for wrath, but for obtaining His salvation. The Lord wants to share His joy with us. That's why He does all these things. That's why He says all these things. And so to get back to the parable, let's discharge our trust, knowing that our Master is not unreasonable, cherishing in our hearts the hope that one day we'll be ready for Him when He comes. And that when He comes, we won't feel ashamed or embarrassed or afraid or somehow grudging or trying to find excuses for our inaction, but thinking, here I am. Lord, I've done it. I stuck to my guns. I was faithful to you. Here you entrusted these things to me. And look, this is what I've done. And wait for those words. Well done, good and faithful servant. Come, share my joy. Share my happiness. It's like that lovely bit at the end of The Last Battle by C.S. Lewis. Naslan says to the children, what's wrong, children? You don't look as happy as I mean you to be. This is it. So he says, wait patiently, because that's what he wants to share with us. Be faithful. Don't give up. Remain faithful to that trust, because he will come, and he'll bless us. Amen.